In the grand cosmic ledger of notable planets, Earth barely warranted a footnote until about 30 standard cycles ago. Not that humans knew this, of course. They were too busy arguing about whether pineapple belongs on pizza to notice they were being catalogued by 17 different spacefaring civilizations. The Galactic Cooperative, because apparently Federation was deemed too cliché by the founding members, had established itself as the premier interstellar political entity some 4,000 years before humans invented the selfie stick. A loose confederation of approximately 300 sentient species, the GC maintained order through a complex system of treaties, trade agreements, and the occasional strongly worded letter. Most species in the GC evolved on what xenobiologists classify as garden worlds, planets with moderate climates, predictable weather patterns, and wildlife that generally doesn't view sentient beings as walking buffets. The average GC citizen lives their entire life without once having to fend off a predator. Must be nice. Earth, by contrast, is what the GC officially terms a Class 4 Deathworld, a designation that essentially translates to visit at your own risk, preferably in armored environmental suits. Between the extreme temperature variations, aggressive microbiota, and the fact that approximately 80% of the native fauna either wants to eat you, poison you, or both simultaneously, Earth makes most GC diplomats break out in nervous hives just thinking about it. When first contact finally happened, not with a majestic landing on the White House lawn, but with a bemused GC survey team encountering a Voyager probe and tracking it back to its embarrassingly primitive source. The general consensus among galactic society was a collective shrug. "Another Deathworld species," remarked Ambassador Zakatral of the Phalanx Hegemony, a being composed primarily of crystalline structures and poor fashion choices. "How quaint! I give them another century before they blow themselves up." What the good ambassador and indeed the entire cooperative failed to grasp was that humans possessed a trait so bizarre, so fundamentally alien to GC sensibilities, that it would eventually turn the entire galactic political structure on its head. Humans domesticate predators. They take killers and turn them into companions. And they've been doing it for over 15,000 years. The first official human delegation to the Galactic Cooperative Central Hub arrived aboard the GC diplomatic vessel Reasonable Accommodation. Captain Eliza Blackwood led the small team of diplomats, scientists, and one very confused botanist who had accidentally been included due to a clerical error involving identical surnames. The Central Hub, a massive Stanford Taurus habitat orbiting a perfectly unremarkable star chosen specifically for its lack of strategic value, housed the primary administrative functions of the GC. Think of it as the galaxy's most bureaucratic small town, where you need 3 forms and a waiting period to use the bathroom. "Welcome to the Hub," droned Orientation Officer Plixnar, a gelatinous being whose species communicated emotion through subtle color changes. Plixnar remained a steadfast beige throughout the entire 4-hour orientation, suggesting either perfect professional neutrality or terminal boredom with their job. You will find that the cooperative values diversity, harmony, and properly filed documentation. The human delegation was assigned quarters in the Extreme Environment Species section, nestled between the methane breathers and a species that required 90% humidity to prevent their exoskeletons from cracking. The message was clear. Humans were considered an oddity, a curiosity from a planet that most civilized beings wouldn't vacation on if you paid them. "Your species evolved on a planet where water falls from the sky?" asked Delegate Voss Teak, an avian representative whose plumage changed color with the phases of their homeworld's 3 moons. "How terribly inconvenient." And you have large predatory animals that still roam wild? Inquired Science Minister Dell, whose species had evolved on a world where the largest carnivore was roughly the size of an Earth hamster. How do you sleep at night? Captain Blackwood, displaying the diplomatic restraint that had earned her this assignment, resisted the urge to explain that Earth's predators were the least of humanity's problems compared to their own politicians. What truly baffled the GC representatives wasn't Earth's harsh conditions or even humanity's surprising technological advancement despite them. No, what they couldn't comprehend was humanity's casual attitude toward danger. Humans seem to possess an almost pathological ability to normalize threats that would send most GC species into collective panic attacks. Little did the cooperative know that this trait, this peculiar human ability to not just survive alongside danger, but to befriend it, would soon become the galaxy's most valuable asset. 3 standard months into humanity's integration with the Galactic Cooperative, the Hub hosted its quarterly diplomatic gala, an event that combined the excitement of international politics with the culinary adventure of trying to eat foods that might technically be sentient in some jurisdictions. Lieutenant Commander Rowan Hayes, Earth's newly appointed security liaison, stood uncomfortably in formal dress blues near the buffet table. Unlike Captain Blackwood, who possessed natural diplomatic flair, Hayes was a former Marine with all the social grace of a bulldozer at a china shop. The GC had requested Earth send security personnel with extensive experience in hostile environment management, and Hayes, with 3 tours in conflict zones and a specialty in wildlife threat assessment, fit the bill perfectly. What the GC hadn't specified, and what Hayes hadn't bothered to mention, was that she rarely traveled anywhere without her service companion. "Is that a juvenile predator species?" gasped Undersecretary Nix Vallon, a methane breather whose environmental suit did little to hide their horror at the creature sitting calmly at Hayes's side. "This is Rex," Hayes replied, scratching behind the German shepherd's ears. "He's a dog. Earth canine. Fully grown, actually." The assembled diplomats maintained a cautious distance, eyeing Rex as though he might suddenly sprout additional heads and breathe fire. The dog, for his part, sat with perfect military posture, occasionally glancing up at Hayes for reassurance. "You brought an apex predator to a diplomatic function?" Ambassador Zakotral's crystalline structures vibrated with what humans would recognize as indignation. "This creature has killing teeth!" Hayes opened her mouth to explain the concept of service animals when the Hub's emergency lighting system activated, bathing the gala in pulsing blue light. "Attention, all personnel," announced the Hub's AI in 17 different languages simultaneously. "Security breach in Sector 7. Unknown biological contaminant detected. Quarantine protocols engaged." The diplomatic corps erupted into controlled chaos, which is to say, they panicked in an orderly fashion, forming neat lines as they rushed toward the exits. Unfortunately, the quarantine protocols had already sealed the gala chamber. "Biological readings indicate presence of Scrix parasites," continued the AI. "Please remain calm while containment teams are dispatched." Hayes watched as the color drained from every alien face, and some color-changing species went through their entire spectrum before settling on a sickly white. Scrix parasites, microscopic organisms that hijacked neural pathways, were the galaxy's equivalent of a zombie plague. Not immediately fatal, but certainly on everyone's top 10 ways I don't want to die list. Then, from an air vent near the ceiling, something dropped into the room. It resembled a cross between a centipede and a small alligator, with far too many legs and a distinctly unpleasant aura of menace. A mature Scrix carrier, the creature that housed and transported the parasites. As the diplomats froze in terror, Rex's ears perked up, and he turned toward the threat. The Scrix carrier skittered across the ceiling, dripping a viscous fluid that contained millions of parasitic spores. One drop on exposed skin would be enough to begin the infection process. The assembled diplomats pressed themselves against the walls, environmental suits activating emergency protocols. Hayes assessed the situation with military precision. The carrier was approximately 2 meters long, lightning fast, and, according to all her briefings, virtually immune to energy weapons due to its distributed nervous system. The containment team would arrive in approximately 7 minutes. Too long. "Rex, attention!" Hayes commanded quietly. The German shepherd's posture shifted instantly from relaxed to alert, muscles tensing as he focused entirely on Hayes. "What are you doing?" hissed Ambassador Zakatral. "That primitive animal can't possibly—" "Rex, Mark," Hayes interrupted, pointing toward the Scrix. What happened next would later be described in 17 different official reports, none of which adequately captured the fluid grace with which the dog moved. Rex launched himself from a standing position, using a decorative table as a springboard to gain height, and intercepted the Scrix carrier mid-air. His powerful jaws clamped around the creature's central mass. The carrier thrashed wildly, but Rex had positioned his bite precisely where Hayes had trained him, at the junction where the creature's primitive brainstem connected to its body. 3 seconds of sustained pressure, and the Scrix went limp. Rex dropped the now-dead carrier on the floor and returned to Hayes's side, sitting at attention as though he hadn't just saved everyone in the room from neural hijacking. "Good boy," Hayes said, producing a treat from her pocket. Rex accepted it with dignified enthusiasm. The silence that followed was profound enough that Hayes could hear the soft whirring of environmental suit filters. That animal. Science Minister Dell finally managed, compound eyes dilated to their maximum aperture. "It obeyed your vocal commands to neutralize a threat." "That's what he's trained for," Hayes replied with a shrug. "Rex is a military working dog, 14th generation of selective breeding for intelligence, loyalty, and protective instincts." "Selective breeding?" Ambassador Voss Teek's plumage fluffed in agitation. "You mean you deliberately guided this predator's evolution?" "Well, yeah. Humans have been doing that for thousands of years. Dogs were wolves once, about 15,000 years ago. We formed a mutually beneficial relationship. They helped us hunt. We shared food. Eventually, they became part of our families." The quarantine doors hissed open as the containment team arrived, only to find their emergency response unnecessary. The team leader, a 6-limbed insectoid in full hazard gear, surveyed the scene with obvious confusion. "The threat has been neutralized," Hayes explained, gesturing to the dead carrier. "My partner handled it." "Partner?" The team leader looked around for another human before their compound eyes settled on Rex. "The quadruped is your partner." "Best partner I've ever had," Hayes confirmed, scratching Rex behind the ears again. 4 tours together. He's saved my life 6 times that I know of." Ambassador Zakatral approached cautiously, crystalline structures vibrating at a frequency that indicated deep thought. "This bond between your species and these dogs, it's not just utilitarian?" Hayes smiled for the first time since arriving at the hub. "Rex lives with me, sleeps at the foot of my bed, knows when I'm sad before I do. He's not just a tool, he's family." The concept seemed to short-circuit several diplomatic translators, which began emitting confused beeping noises. "You're saying," Science Minister Dell clarified slowly, "that humans routinely form emotional bonds with predator species to the point where you consider them family members and they willingly protect you in return. Pretty much, Hayes nodded. And not just dogs. Cats, horses, ferrets, birds of prey. We've domesticated dozens of species over our history. The gathered diplomats exchanged glances that transcended species barriers, conveying a universal message. We may have severely underestimated these humans. News of the diplomatic gala incident, as it was officially designated in GC records. Unofficially, several species were calling it the "holy shit, did you see what that Earth beast did" event, spread through the hub's communication channels faster than a quantum entanglement breach. Within 24 hours, the Cooperative's Xenobiological Research Division had established a priority investigation into human-animal relationships. Dr. Nima Okafor, the human delegation's xenobiologist, found herself suddenly very popular among her galactic colleagues. Her scheduled presentation on Earth's biodiversity, a survival guide for non-natives, was hastily upgraded from a side-room seminar to the hub's main auditorium. Standing room only, with 17 different species requiring translation services. To understand human domestication practices, Dr. Okafor began, displaying holographic images of various Earth animals. One must first understand that Earth's evolutionary pressures created an unusually high number of predator species. Humans, being relatively weak physically, developed intelligence and tool use as survival adaptations. The audience murmured as images of wolves, lions, and bears appeared in the air above them. Rather than simply avoiding or exterminating dangerous species, humans discovered that certain animals could be selectively bred for desirable traits. The process began with wolves, which shared our social structure and hunting patterns. Science Minister Dell raised a limb. But why would the predators agree to this arrangement? What evolutionary advantage does servitude provide? Dr. Okafor smiled. That's the fascinating part. It's not servitude, it's partnership. The animals received consistent food, protection from competing predators, medical care, and social bonding. In return, they provided humans with protection, hunting assistance, pest control, and companionship. She displayed a timeline showing the domestication of various species. Dogs, 15,000 years ago, cats, 10,000 years, horses, 6,000 years, and so on. The most remarkable aspect, she continued, is the neurochemical bonding that occurs. Both humans and domesticated animals experience oxytocin release during positive interactions. In essence, we evolved to love each other. Ambassador Zacatral's crystalline structures vibrated with intensity. Are you suggesting that these predator species actually feel affection for humans? Absolutely. The bond goes both ways. A dog will risk its life to protect its human family, not out of obligation, but out of genuine attachment. The GC's Cultural Exchange Committee, never known for its rapid response to anything, authorized an unprecedented emergency expedition to Earth. A team of xenobiologists, cultural anthropologists, and security specialists departed for the Deathworld with a mission to observe human-animal interactions in their natural environment. Their reports filtered back to the hub over the following weeks, each more astonishing than the last. Humans allow juvenile felines, obligate carnivores with razor-sharp claws, to sleep on their faces. Equines weighing 500+ kilograms willingly allow humans to mount their backs and direct their movements. Avian predators with visual acuity 8 times that of humans return to their handlers despite having the freedom to fly away. And, perhaps most shocking, humans have developed emotional support animals, creatures whose primary function is to provide psychological comfort through physical proximity. The concept that a species would deliberately form emotional bonds with natural predators as a therapeutic practice caused the GC's Psychology Guild to call an emergency symposium. 3 delegates reportedly required sedation after viewing footage of emotional support tarantulas. 2 standard months after the Gala incident, the hub's long-range sensors detected an anomaly approaching from the galactic rim. Initial scans classified it as a rogue asteroid, but subsequent analysis revealed artificial propulsion systems and biological signatures. "It appears to be a derelict vessel," reported Admiral Klovacs of the GC Defense Fleet. "Origin unknown, trajectory suggests it's been drifting for several centuries." The Council authorized a salvage mission, dispatching the research vessel Prudent Inquiry to investigate. Standard procedure for potentially hazardous derelicts. Send in drones, establish safety parameters, then follow with organic personnel if conditions permit. 26 hours later, the Prudent Inquiry sent a distress signal before communications abruptly terminated. Emergency response vessels arrived to find the research ship adrift. Life support systems functional, but no signs of crew activity. The rescue team, encased in Class A hazard suits, discovered the entire 40-member crew in a catatonic state, vital signs stable, but brain activity minimal. And throughout the ship, small insectoid creatures skittered through the ventilation systems. "Neurological parasites," confirmed the GC's chief medical officer. "Similar to scrics, but more advanced. They don't kill the host, they render them docile while maintaining basic biological functions." The parasites spread to 3 more vessels before containment protocols locked down that sector of space. Conventional weapons proved ineffective. The creatures seemed to anticipate energy signatures and evacuation patterns. Quarantine zones expanded as more ships fell silent. The GC Council convened an emergency session, with representatives from all member species contributing their best scientific minds to the problem. Sophisticated drone systems failed. Remote-piloted combat units were quickly overwhelmed. AI-controlled defense platforms became infected through methods that defied current understanding of machine-parasite interfaces. "We need a solution that doesn't rely on technology," insisted Admiral Klovacs. "These parasites seem capable of subverting any system with sufficient complexity." In the back of the council chamber, Lieutenant Commander Hayes exchanged a glance with Captain Blackwood. "Permission to speak, Captain?" Hayes requested quietly. Blackwood nodded, and Hayes stepped forward, addressing the council directly. "With respect, honored representatives, I believe Earth may have a solution to your parasite problem." Ambassador Zacatral's crystalline structures shifted to a frequency indicating skepticism. "And what might that be, Lieutenant Commander?" Hayes smiled slightly. "The same solution humans have been using for thousands of years when faced with vermin infestations. We bring in the experts." "Experts?" echoed Science Minister Dell. "Yes," Hayes confirmed. "Earth's premier hunting specialists, with sensory capabilities your technology can't match, immune to technological subversion, and with thousands of years of selective breeding for exactly this purpose." She activated her comm unit, displaying holographic images of various Earth animals, dogs, cats, ferrets, and several specialized breeds. "Ladies, gentlemen, and non-binary representatives of the Galactic Cooperative," Hayes announced, with the confidence of someone about to play their winning hand, "I'd like to introduce you to Earth's Pest Control Division." The GC Council chamber erupted into a cacophony of translated objections, clarification requests, and the occasional sound of a species whose language included ritualized gasping. "You propose to deploy non-sentient predators against an unknown parasitic threat?" Admiral Kolvax's tentacles twisted in what humans had learned was an expression of extreme doubt. "This is not a vermin problem in a domicile, Commander. These are sophisticated neurological parasites that have disabled our most advanced defensive systems. Hayes stood her ground. With respect, Admiral, that's precisely why conventional approaches are failing. These parasites adapt to technology and predictable response patterns. Earth animals operate on instinct, training, and sensory input that can't be hacked or subverted. Captain Blackwood stepped forward to support her officer. The Council should consider that Earth's history is filled with examples of animals detecting threats humans couldn't perceive. Dogs can smell certain cancers before medical scans detect them. Cats sense minute changes in air pressure and electromagnetic fields. Ferrets can navigate complex tunnel systems that would confound our best mapping technology. After 6 hours of debate, lightning fast by GC standards, where arguments about cafeteria menu changes could last weeks, the Council approved what became officially designated as Operation Companion Shield, and unofficially called Unleash the Earth Beasts by junior staffers. 3 days later, the GC quarantine vessel Rational Precaution approached the infected zone, carrying an unusual cargo. 24 dogs of various specialized breeds, 15 cats, 8 ferrets, 4 rats, and 6 specialized handlers from Earth's Interspecies Cooperation Division. Dr. Maya Volkov, Earth's leading expert in search and rescue animal training, supervised the operation from the vessel's command center. A former disaster response coordinator with 30 years of experience, Volkov had personally trained animals to find survivors in earthquake rubble, detect landmines, and track missing persons across impossible terrain. Each animal team has been selected for specific capabilities, she explained to the GC officers observing the preparation. The Belgian Malinois and German Shepherds are our primary detection and neutralization units. Border Collies provide tactical assessment. The cats will access areas too small for the dogs, while the ferrets and rats can navigate ventilation systems. And they will follow orders? Asked a GC security officer, watching as handler Jamal Rodriguez fitted a specialized protective vest onto Kira, a black and tan Malinois with alert eyes and quivering muscles that spoke of barely contained energy. They'll follow their training and their instincts, Rodriguez answered, securing the final strap. Kira here can detect scent particles at concentrations of 1 part per trillion. She can hear heartbeats through walls, and she's been trained since puppyhood to identify and neutralize threats. The first deployment targeted the Prudent Inquiry, where the parasitic infestation had begun. Animal teams entered the vessel through airlocks, each handler monitoring their companions through specialized non-electronic communication systems, simple tug patterns on leads, hand signals, and vocal commands. The GC observers watched in stunned silence as the Earth animals methodically swept through the ship. The dogs moved with military precision, clearing rooms and marking parasite nests with specialized non-toxic indicators. Cats slipped through maintenance ducts, driving parasites toward containment zones. Ferrets and rats flushed the creatures from hiding places too small for larger animals to access. When parasites attempted to swarm, the dogs demonstrated why Earth predators had evolved to be apex hunters. Their speed, strength, and precision left the GC security teams speechless. The parasites, which had easily overwhelmed technological defenses, had no evolutionary answer to teeth, claws, and predatory instinct honed over millions of years. They're communicating with each other, noted Science Minister Dell, watching as a border collie and a tabby cat coordinated their movements without apparent signals. How are they sharing tactical information without technology? Body language mostly, Dr. Volkov explained. Animals read each other's intentions through subtle cues, ear positions, tail movements, scent markers. They're processing environmental information and adapting in real time. Within 14 hours, the prudent inquiry was declared parasite-free. The animal teams moved methodically through the quarantine zone, clearing vessel after vessel. When they encountered the catatonic crew members, specialized therapy dogs provided unexpected assistance. Their presence seemed to stimulate neural activity in the affected individuals. The parasites evolved to counter technological threats, Dr. Volkov observed, reviewing medical scans of recovering crew members. They have no defense against the neurochemical responses triggered by animal companionship. The oxytocin and serotonin release seems to disrupt the parasitic control mechanisms. By the operation's conclusion, 17 vessels had been cleared, 43 parasite nests destroyed, and over 200 crew members were showing signs of recovery. Not a single animal was lost, though several sported minor injuries that the handlers treated with practiced efficiency. As the last vessel was declared secure, Admiral Kovacs approached Dr. Volkov with the formal posture of official recognition. The Galactic Cooperative acknowledges Earth's contribution to resolving this crisis, the Admiral stated. Your companions have accomplished what our most advanced systems could not. Kira, the Malinois who had led the first team into the infected zone, sat at perfect attention beside handler Rodriguez, her mission complete. Rodriguez reached down to scratch behind her ears, and her tail thumped against the deck plating. Just another day at work for her, Rodriguez said with a smile. She'll be expecting extra treats tonight, though. 6 standard months after Operation Companion Shield, the Galactic Cooperative's annual policy summit featured an unprecedented addition to its agenda. Proposal A137-B, reclassification of Earth from Class 4 Deathworld to Strategic Evolutionary Resource. The proposal passed with only 3 dissenting votes, all from species that communicated through spore exchange and found the concept of mammals fundamentally disturbing. Earth's delegation, now expanded to include specialists in veterinary medicine, animal behavior, and interspecies cooperation, found themselves elevated from curiosities to honored advisors. The hub established a permanent terrestrial life sciences wing, complete with specialized habitats for Earth animals serving as both research subjects and, increasingly, as companions to GC personnel who had discovered the peculiar comfort of petting a purring cat during diplomatic crises. Ambassador Zekatrol, whose crystalline structures had initially vibrated with alarm at the sight of Rex, now kept a small Scottish terrier named Granite in his personal quarters. The ambassador's aides noted that his decision-making processes had become more efficient since forming this unlikely bond, though they tactfully avoided mentioning the small plaid sweater he had commissioned for the dog. The most remarkable aspect of this cultural exchange, noted GC anthropologist Ven Tick in her widely distributed analysis, is not that humans domesticated predators, but that they recognize the value of partnership over domination. Where other species might have exterminated threats or engineered them out of existence, humans found ways to create mutual benefit. Lieutenant Commander Hayes, now promoted to commander and serving as Earth's chief security liaison, found herself giving regular lectures on human-animal cooperation to standing-room-only audiences. Rex, now sporting official GC diplomatic credentials, complete with a paw print signature, accompanied her everywhere. His calm demeanor and watchful eyes doing more for human-alien relations than 1,000 diplomatic speeches. The universe is fundamentally hostile, Hayes explained during one such lecture. Earth taught humans that survival doesn't always mean conquering your environment. Sometimes it means finding allies in unexpected places. The Galactic Cooperative's defense fleet began a pilot program incorporating Earth animals into their security protocols. The medical division discovered that therapy animals accelerated recovery rates across 17 different species. The agricultural sector implemented Earth pollination models using specialized bee colonies to increase crop yields by 34%. Perhaps most telling was the change in galactic tourism patterns. Earth, once avoided as a dangerous backwater, became the third most popular destination in the cooperative, with visitors eager to experience what promotional materials called the planet where predators become friends. Captain Blackwood, reviewing the quarterly diplomatic status report in her office aboard the newly commissioned Earth Embassy ship Mutual Benefit, smiled at the latest statistics. "Did you see this?" she asked Hayes, who was reviewing security protocols while Rex dozed at her feet. 17 GC member species have now applied for permission to adopt Earth animals. The Phalanx hegemony wants to establish a corgi breeding program. Hayes laughed. Corgis? For crystalline beings? That should be interesting. Apparently, they appreciate the low center of gravity and problem-solving abilities, Blackwood replied. Who would have thought our greatest contribution to galactic civilization would be pets? As if recognizing he was being discussed, Rex lifted his head and gave a soft woof. Not pets, Hayes corrected, reaching down to scratch her companion's ears. Partners. Across the galaxy, on worlds where the concept of domestication had never evolved, beings of all descriptions were discovering what humans had known for 15,000 years. That sometimes the most powerful alliance isn't with those who are most like you, but with those whose differences complement your own. And somewhere, in the vast bureaucratic archives of the Galactic Cooperative, Earth's original classification file received a final annotation. Caution. Inhabitants domesticate apex predators for companionship. Approach with respect.